class. We're starting Module 8, which covers chapters 9 and 11. It will seem odd to throw these together, but these are two topics that we've talked about already in the class. You've seen them running through information. In fact, as I just read the discussion boards for the current module we're on, where you watch an hour of television to look for the gender issues, you've already picked up many of the points that come out through media. Are we getting the right information? So I combine these together, even though they don't fit, but they both tie as a review and an addition to what you're learning about social problems. For some of you with your posters, you may have even used these two topics: the impact of work, the loss of workplace jobs to the global environment, the global society, the changing things back and forth. And so here we're looking at history as we look forward to exploring what's going on. As you noticed, I started dividing out the student learning outcomes so they're separate, but it won't hurt to look at those if you get a chance, to know what the goals are for your learning for this particular module. So the first chapter explored the changing nature of the social issues, the move from farm to city, the issues of industrialization, and how it changed so many things. It changed the level of income, who was employed, who was unemployed, the structure of the family, and now we're exploring it again as you start looking at those particular issues. So a quick look at the PowerPoints as we explore those. So there is this changing nature of work, that we've gone from the farm-based society to an industrial revolution. Family production was replaced by capitalists owning businesses that people were employed in. And by the 1960s, we again start facing a shift in the work nature to service revolution. And so by the 1960s, we start seeing more of a base towards service economy. And there was a significant loss, a job loss, a deindustrialization still going on in this country today. U.S. manufacturers lost more than 2.7 million jobs since 2000. And they were often replaced by unstable, low-paying service jobs. So especially consumer jobs, like working at Walmart, tourist jobs, summer jobs, service jobs in food industry as well. We've noticed significant differences too in the workplace, women in the workplace. And we talked a little bit about this when we talked about gender issues, and you looked at the issues of Lily Ledbetter. But women entered the workforce in large numbers. Now remember, women were always working, but they weren't always in the industrial setting in the same manner that men were. And so women entered the industrial world and other places, and they outnumber men in the workforce, in the workplace, with the current population. So we've seen some difference. And the elderly are increasingly returning to work. And this goes back to our chapter on aging. Number one, the jobs may not require the physical strength that they previously did. Many things are computer related. The issue as far as saving for retirement definitely comes into this role. And the fact is that we live so much longer that we need to work longer, and that there are significant issues that keep the elderly there. They can't afford to live on their retirement income. Many want to continue to work, and on top of that, there are not necessarily workers to replace them. Interesting that in McDonald's years ago set up a program called McSeniors. They found that seniors were better employees than the high school and college student and more reliable. So they encouraged hiring older workers who come out of the workforce and work with flexible schedules for them. So we see some very different things going on. Now, work serves a function in society. It provides us the predictability of our life experience. The functionalist viewpoint looks at, helps us to determine when we get married, have children. Think about that. When we get married now is at an older age, and part of that is determined because we stay in school longer. You can see the interaction of these other social issues that we've talked about and the other social conditions going on. From the complex perspectives, Marx talked about the power is determined by one relationship to the meaning of production. And this process of de-skilling separates us and creates this work environment that is oftentimes boring, monotonous, and not highly rewarding. So he argues that the capitalists and the corporate leaders maintain their power and their advantage over the workers and the general public. What's interesting is we can think about this as we separate ourselves. If you are in, as my friend's brother was, working in the Cadillac plant year after year, 30-some years, he put in windshields over and over again. He had assists to get there. Computers eventually helped with that. But he could go to work very high, intoxicated, drugged, and still do his job. He separated from society and felt that feeling of enemy that we've talked about previously, in that by de-skilling the worker and not investing in them. When we speak of auto plants, we know that the Saturn plant was actually built differently, that GM put in that model so that everyone would have a responsibility for what they did and they could do each other's job. And so the final product was something that they were proud of, and it changed the whole market. But again, that failed based on our economic downturn, and we saw the loss of that in the last decade. Interactionists look at work as a way that we have meaning to our lives, even our majors. If I sat you down, as I do in my intro class, and have you do an I am, our jobs become, our work environment becomes part of that definition of ourselves, that we link it to who we are. So where do we go from here? What are the issues and the social problems? Unemployment and underemployment. We still have issues of unemployment. Even though the employment has picked up in the country, there are many people that have been lost on the radar out there, that they just have dropped out of the numbers being counted, because when unemployment is counted, it's those who are actively seeking a job. We have a significant number of people that are underemployed, so that they've had the skills, they've taken higher levels of college education and cannot find the job that fits what they've studied for. So that we see this higher link of underemployment. The people are not getting paid what their level of skill is for, and it involves fewer hours. And therefore, we see some interesting things that go into place, such as holding down multiple jobs to earn the income that you need to support your family that we talked about early on. There are problems with globalization. Now, here's a perfect topic for a position paper. Globalization, whereby the goods are made by other people and other cultures. And so we have high levels coming from places like Korea. In the past, it was Japan. Now it's China. We see that we have major products coming out of other countries. It means that we are in this global society. We have to communicate. We have to know more languages. It's not just an economic phenomenon, It's social and cultural, and it has a lot of implication. But believe it or not, there's very positive things about globalizations. We forget to talk about that a lot. It creates this new world market. It keeps us sharp. It keeps us innovative. And guess what? Some of that globalization comes back to us as well. The United States has doubled its foreign trade, leading to creation of 17 million jobs. And we don't always talk about that. We know the downsides, the decline in work security, the skilled workers are threatened by unfair competition. Labor unions have been wiped down in the process. And now we're even talking about the loss of skilled workers, that we need to build our skilled workers to get to that point. So we've had an increase of temporary workers, of outsourcing, of calling for help from or reserving our airline ticket, and we're talking to someone in India, or we're talking to someone in another country. We've outsourced that. My husband works for Goodyear. They actually outsourced their human resource department, and it's currently in Jamaica. It had been in India. They go for the cheapest value out there. Who can they get who will do the job? Livable wage is a significant issue. And in 1990, the federal minimum wage was $3.80. It was increased to $5.15 by 1997. We know the fight for minimum wage as we look at New York, and New York City's minimum wage increased to $15. Now that's state, that's not federal. Federal guidelines are much lower, and are oftentimes states are higher based on what the state need is. And so low-wage workers are more likely to be minorities. They're more likely to be females. They're more likely to be non-college educated and non-union, and face some significant issues. Again, another topic for a position paper is whether we should raise minimum wage or whether we should not. We can see both sides of that. What happens to the employer? What happens to the employee? Significant issues include discrimination in the workplace, issues of sweatshop labor. So you'll be examining all of these. And we also have the issue of fighting back. We've seen the destruction of labor unions, but the work for fair bargaining practices, what comes into place, and exploring those issues. So we know we're covering 2 chapters. And, the second is to look at media. And media is very tied to employment as well. But media looks at the different technological processes that facilitate communication. So media is much more than that television. It is obviously clearly all the things like Facebook and Twitter and all of the processes of the internet. It is the internet itself that comes into media. It is films that we see at the theater as well. So many different things comprise what's media. And media, it's been accused of being a problem in itself. It contains the images of racism, violence, sexism. You've looked at this in one of your discussion boards as you started to explore some of the influence of the media and how it's changed over time. So if we examine this from the perspectives, we look at the structure relationship between the media and other social institutions, that media serves as a link, and it ties the individual and the community and the nations together. It creates this collective consciousness. In fact, media creates what we consider a social problem is. Media has been accused of some serious dysfunctioning and social problems in society. We have heard our president say that over and over again about the media issues, that there's this whole popular media that goes into place, and there's a link between television viewing, poor physical health, and children and adults much less the time spent in front of the computer, as we see the gaming process going on as well. So it's gone way beyond these original concerns that we see the aggression and concerns related to it, not only through television watching, but through all sources of the media. The conflicts perspective say, according to conflicts, there it is, media can only be fully understood. We understand who controls it. One of the videos I could have shown you was on who controls, and you know that the major players out there, that General Electric owns NBC, that Disney owns ABC. You know, you've got some pretty powerful corporations out there, and they play major roles in what is provided and what is shown. We've looked generally at the feminist perspective out there when we looked at some of the stereotyping and the disparaging things that occurred in minorities and women on in media. And then we look at the focus, and we could go all the way back to a girl like me, as we look at the reality, how media defines on what's newsworthy and how we look and who's important. It adds to ageism, it adds to racism, and how we define ourselves and how we see ourselves. So, what are the issues of media? What are the social problems? Well, the increased involvement of being able to watch our involvement. You know that as we shop on Amazon or as we hit any link in the computer, we're being tracked today, that social media companies scrutinize us, that as I open my internet browser, I will see different things than you see. Because of the things I've clicked on, the ads that will pop up are related to what my interests are. So are the news articles. And so this watching over is occurring. And what's that affecting? We have the digital divide and who has access. You know, is it part of a right to have the access to the internet? Yet we know in society that people are held back when they don't have that opportunity to work at the same level. And so we have this digital divide going on. The divide is also a global phenomena. And excuse me, in 1995, only 14% of US had internet. Now we're talking about 90% of adults use the internet either for work or for personal use. And they find it very hard to give it up. I was 4 days without internet. I was driving to the university and spending significant hours there working on my course, but also trying to get that keep up because we are so tied to that internet and pulling ourselves in. So we have such issues of abuse and addiction modified by the internet itself, and gaming can be part of the addiction. We have cybersexuality, we have the online gambling, we have online sex. All of these become part of the social problems. And then we have the problems with television. We no longer, in most cases, can get television over the air. It's an expensive. It is controlled what comes into our home. Again, who owns Dish, who owns DirecTV, who owns Comcast, all of those. They affect that. Children spend more than 6 hours a day in various media sources. And so we see the difference of where their influence is. And so we have such things as looking at media as part of the problem with children being overweight, the aggressiveness of people, the response, and what goes into place. So you have a lot of pieces that you're looking at here within the media. I'm going to bring this back to our content for what you're doing with this particular module. You have a video of Is Walmart Good for America as we look at what the United States employment giant, by the way, Amazon is banging on their doors, but what they do related to employees and how industry has changed. And then a video on media hype, what comes into place, and a quick little TED talk on how important that the problems of uh, media also have a counterside, that there are great advantages of our social media and what's coming into place. With that, you've got a lot to consider. So I hope that you remember, as we're looking at across the bottom here, you're covering a great many issues. You can see how courses like the sociology of the media and when we look at the sociology of work, these will bring these topics to a much deeper level if you take those upper level courses. With that, I hope you have a great day.